My name is Alex, I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the reliable, invisible son. The one you call when the car breaks down or a pipe bursts, but not the one you call to celebrate a victory. That role was always reserved for my brother, Leo. So when my phone buzzed in early November with a text from my mother, I braced for the usual pre-holiday drama. The text read, "Hi honey. Things have been very hard for Leo and your father, and I want to keep the peace. Let's just skip Christmas this year. No gifts, no big dinner. Just peace." I stared at the words, and a slow, unfamiliar feeling spread through my chest. It was relief. Pure, unadulterated relief. I typed back a single word, perfect. It felt like a get-out-of-jail-free card, a hall pass from the annual performance of pretending my family was a normal, happy unit. I imagined a quiet December, working on my own projects, spending time with my girlfriend, Sarah, maybe even taking a small trip. But a part of me, the part that had been conditioned by 3 decades of their behavior, knew this peace was a mirage. It wasn't a truce, it was a repositioning of their forces. They weren't cancelling Christmas, they were just cancelling my part in it, while expecting me to bankroll and repair their lives in other ways. They had no idea that I had spent the last 10 years building a fortress they couldn't breach, and this little text message was the catalyst that would finally force me to show them the walls. Before I continue with how this peaceful Christmas became the most explosive confrontation of our lives, do me a favor. If you've ever felt like the family ATM, the unpaid handyman, or the designated scapegoat, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below and tell me if you've ever had to choose between your sanity and a family obligation. You're not alone, and this story is for you. To understand why that simple text felt like such a monumental shift, you have to understand the landscape of my childhood. It was a territory neatly divided into 2 kingdoms, Leo's and mine. Leo's kingdom was a land of sunshine, praise, and endless resources. Mine was a grey, utilitarian patch of earth where I was expected to grow myself with no water or light. From the very beginning, Leo was the golden child. He had the charming smile, the quick wit, and a magnetic personality that made people forgive his endless stream of screw-ups. I was the quiet, serious one. While Leo was out charming the neighbors, I was in the garage taking apart the lawnmower to figure out why it was sputtering, then putting it back together so it ran better than before. My parents saw this not as a skill, but as my inherent function. I was the fixer. When I was 12, I saved up money from mowing lawns all summer to buy a new bike. I was so proud of it. A week later, Leo borrowed it without asking and wrapped it around a telephone pole showing off for his friends. When I came to my parents, heartbroken, my father just sighed and said, "Alex, it's just a bike. Your brother feels terrible." Leo didn't feel terrible, he was laughing about it an hour later. I never got an apology, and I certainly never got a new bike. Instead, I spent the next 2 weekends doing extra chores to earn the money to buy replacement parts, learning how to straighten a bent frame and relace a wheel. Meanwhile, my parents bought Leo a brand new video game console to cheer him up from the trauma of his accident. This pattern defined our lives. In high school, my straight-A report cards were met with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," while Leo's C average was celebrated with a fancy dinner because he'd really applied himself this semester when he inevitably crashed the family car at 17. My college fund, the one I had contributed to with my own part-time job earnings, was drained to cover the damages and the insurance hike. "It's what families do for each other," my mother explained, her eyes pleading with me to understand. "Leo is just having a hard time finding his way." I didn't argue. I just got a second job. I was the family shock absorber, the silent, load-bearing wall that allowed the rest of the house to stand, no matter how much dysfunction rattled its foundations. They never saw the cracks forming in me because they never bothered to look. My parents had always pushed the university path. For them, success was a degree, a corner office, and a title. It was the path they envisioned for Leo. For me, they just assumed I'd figure something out. After the car incident drained my college fund, the pressure was off. I was free in a way Leo never would be. Instead of chasing a degree I didn't want and couldn't afford, I took a job with a local contracting company. My dad was mortified. A construction worker? Alex, what will people think? He'd asked, as if my chosen profession was a direct reflection on his social standing. But I loved it. I loved the feeling of building something real with my own hands. And that's where I met Frank. Frank was the owner, a grizzled old master carpenter in his late 60s with hands like leather and an eye for detail that bordered on obsessive. He saw something in me my parents never did: potential. He didn't just teach me how to frame a wall or wire an outlet, he taught me how to read blueprints, how to bid a job, how to manage a crew, and most importantly, how to run a business. "Your family doesn't get it, kid," he told me one afternoon over coffee. "They see the sawdust on your boots. They don't see the architecture in your head. Don't you ever let them make you feel small for building things." For 5 years, I was his shadow. I absorbed everything. I lived in a tiny, cheap apartment, drove a beat-up truck, and saved every single penny I could. While Leo was bouncing between unpaid internships and finding himself on my parents' dime, I was quietly getting my general contractor's license. I started taking on small side jobs, weekend projects that Frank would pass my way. Then, bigger jobs. I legally formed my own LLC. To my family, I was still just Alex, the handyman they'd call me with a condescending tone. "Hey, Alex, my buddy needs a deck built." I told him my brother does that sort of thing for cheap. I never corrected them. I let them believe I was barely scraping by. Their ignorance was my shield. It allowed me to reinvest every dollar back into my company. I bought better tools, a new work truck, and eventually, a small warehouse space. I built a reputation for being meticulous, reliable, and fair. My business grew, silently and steadily, a secret empire they couldn't imagine. By the time I was 30, I had a crew of 6 guys working for me and a portfolio of custom homes and major remodels. I had also bought a piece of land and, in my spare time, built my own house, a modest but beautiful home with a large workshop, all paid for in cash. They had no idea. They just thought I was still living in that same crappy apartment, fixing leaky faucets for a living. The peace promised by my mother's text message lasted exactly 4 days. My phone rang, and my father's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. The message, when I listened to it, was dripping with that familiar, casual entitlement. "Alex, your mother and I were thinking. Since we're not doing all that Christmas nonsense this year, you'll have some free time. The guest room toilet has been running non-stop, and there are a few gutters that need clearing out before the snow comes. Why don't you swing by this weekend and take care of it? Give me a call." There was no please, no if you're not busy. It was a summons. It wasn't a request, it was a task assignment. I was having dinner with Sarah when I played it for her. She just shook her head, a small, sad smile on her face. "They just don't see it, do they?" she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "They think skipping Christmas is a favor to them, freeing you up to be their on-call janitor." She was right. That was just the beginning. A few days later, another call, this time from my mother. "Honey," she started, her voice syrupy sweet, "I was talking to Leo. His car is making that funny noise again. Do you think you could just take a quick look at it for him? He's so stressed about work, and a big repair bill would just crush him right now." What work? He was working part-time at a shoe store, a job he complained about constantly. I knew for a fact that the funny noise, it was a symptom of him never changing the oil. The demands kept escalating. It was a text from Leo asking if he could borrow my professional-grade paint sprayer for a project. It was my dad leaving another message about how the fence in the backyard needed 3 new posts. Each request was framed as a small, insignificant thing, but together they formed a suffocating blanket of expectation. They had interpreted my perfect response not as an agreement for mutual peace, but as my consent to be a resource without the inconvenient obligation of having to buy me a Christmas gift in return. The irony was suffocating. They wanted to skip the 1 day a year dedicated to family togetherness so they could have peace, but their idea of peace was to fill my personal time with their personal problems. I ignored the texts. I let the calls go to voicemail. A quiet rebellion was brewing in me, and for the first time, it didn't feel like defiance. It felt like self-preservation. The breaking point arrived, as it always did, wrapped in the guise of a family gathering. It was 2 days before Christmas when my phone buzzed with a group text from my mother, sent to me, Leo, and my father. Surprise! Just a little, simple Christmas Eve dinner tomorrow night at our place, 7 p.m. Nothing fancy, just family. Can't wait to see you. I stared at my phone in disbelief. So much for skipping Christmas. So much for peace. This was their checkmate. They knew I was traditionally free on Christmas Eve. By framing it as a casual, last-minute thing, they were making it impossible for me to refuse without looking like the bad guy, the one who was breaking the impromptu holiday truce. Sarah read the text over my shoulder. "It's a trap, Alex," she said softly. "They're pulling you back in." I knew she was right. I typed out my reply, my thumb hovering over the send button. "Sorry, I have other plans. Hope you guys have a great time." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. The response was immediate and furious. A call from my dad, which I ignored. A string of texts from my mom. "What other plans?" "Alex, it's Christmas Eve. Your brother was really looking forward to seeing you. This is very hurtful." And finally, the classic, "After everything we've done for you." I turned my phone off. Sarah and I had a quiet, wonderful Christmas Eve. We cooked a nice meal, exchanged gifts, and watched old movies. It was the most peaceful holiday I'd had in my adult life. The next morning, Christmas Day, I was in my workshop, sketching out plans for a new project, when the crunch of tires on my gravel driveway made me look up. It was my parents' car. And Leo was in the back seat. They got out and just stood there, staring. Not at me, but at my house. The house they'd never seen. The 3-car garage with the workshop. My new company truck parked neatly to the side. Their faces were a mixture of confusion and shock. My father was the first to speak, his voice tight. "What is this? Where are we, Alex?" "This is my house, Dad," I said, my voice even. My mother's eyes darted around, calculating. You live here?" "How?" Leo got out of the car, his jaw practically on the ground. "Whoa. You've been holding out on us, bro. I thought you were broke." And there it was. The greed, naked and ugly, instantly eclipsing the shock. My father's eyes narrowed. "So this is why you were too busy for your family? You're sitting on all this, while your brother struggles." The accusation hung in the cold winter air, and I knew the time for hiding was over. Standing there on my own property, a place built with my own sweat and discipline, something inside me finally solidified. The years of quiet resentment, of swallowing my frustration, they were over. I looked at the three of them, their faces a canvas of disbelief and dawning avarice, and I felt nothing but a cold, hard clarity. "This," I said, gesturing to my house, my workshop, my truck, "has nothing to do with you. This is what I was doing while you were celebrating Leo's C-minuses. This is what I was building while you were draining my college fund to fix his mistakes. This is the result of every weekend I spent working while you told me I should be aiming for a realtor job." My father's face flushed with anger. "Don't you use that tone with me. We gave you a roof over your head. We supported you. You tolerated me," I shot back, my voice rising but steady. "You never once asked me about my business. You don't even know the name of my company. You just know my phone number for when something breaks. You think I'm a handyman? Fine. My rate is $150 an hour, with a 4-hour minimum. You want your toilet fixed? You want your fence mended? Send me a work order. But the family discount is expired." Effective immediately, my mother put a hand to her chest, her face a mask of wounded performance. "Alex, how can you be so cruel? Were you family when you let Leo wreck my bike and told me to get over it?" I asked, the memory still sharp. "Were you family when you took my savings for his mistake? Family is supposed to be a two-way street. With you guys, it's a one-way toll road," and I was the only one paying. Leo, who had been silent, finally piped up with an entitled whine. "Come on, man. If you had all this, you could have helped me out. My business idea could have really taken off with a little investment." I laughed, a real, bitter laugh. "An investment? Leo, you're not a startup, you're a black hole." "The answer is no. I'm not funding you. I'm not fixing your car. And I am not spending my holidays catering to your manufactured dramas anymore." I took a step back toward my front door, where Sarah was now standing, watching. I looked at my parents, at my brother, 3 strangers standing in my driveway. "That PC you wanted for Christmas? Here it is. Enjoy it. Now please, get off my property." I turned my back on their stunned, gaping faces, walked into my house with Sarah, and locked the door behind me. The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation was a predictable storm of emotional warfare. My phone, which I had turned back on, became a weapon aimed directly at me. My mother launched a campaign of guilt-laced text messages. They started with "Wounded sorrow, I can't believe you would speak to us that way on Christmas Day," and quickly devolved into manipulative pleas. "Your father is so upset he can't sleep. His health isn't what it used to be, you know." Each message was a carefully crafted dart designed to find the soft spots of my conditioning, the years of training to feel responsible for their happiness. My father, on the other hand, opted for angry voicemails. They were tirades about disrespect, about my obligations as a son, about the shame I was bringing upon the family name. "Who do you think you are?" he boomed in one message. "You build a fancy house and suddenly you're too good for the people who raised you. You have a debt to this family, boy, and you will pay it." Leo's approach was more modern. He posted vague, passive-aggressive statuses on social media about family turning their backs on you when you need them most and how money changes people. Of course, his friends all chimed in with supportive comments, painting me as a heartless monster. They tried to poison the well with our extended family, too. My mother called her sister, my Aunt Carol, weeping about how her own son had disowned her. But that particular strategy backfired spectacularly. Aunt Carol called me a day later. I braced myself for a lecture, but her voice was kind. "Alex," she said, "your mother told me her version of the story. Now, I want to hear yours." I told her everything. The years of favoritism, the financial sacrifices, the constant dismissal of my life and my work. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. "Honey," she finally said, her voice full of a warmth I rarely got from my own mother. "I've seen it my whole life. I never said anything, and maybe I should have. They always put that boy on a pedestal and expected you to build the damn thing. Don't you let them make you feel guilty for 1 second. I am so proud of you." Hearing those words from her was like a dam breaking inside me. It was the validation I had craved for 30 years. That call, combined with Sarah's unwavering support and late-night talks with my best friend Mark, built a new foundation under me. They were my true family, my chosen family, and with them at my back, I held firm against the tide of manipulation. I blocked my parents' and Leo's numbers. The war for my independence was over, and the long, quiet process of healing could begin. In the months that followed my declaration of independence, I focused on my own life with a singular, peaceful intensity. The silence from my family was initially jarring, like the phantom limb of a constant ache that had suddenly vanished. But soon, it was replaced by a profound sense of calm. I poured my energy into my business, taking on a challenging custom home project that pushed my creative and logistical skills to their limits. I spent my evenings with Sarah, building our life together in the house I had built with my hands. We hosted barbecues for my crew and their families, for Mark, and for Aunt Carol. My home, once a secret fortress, became a hub of genuine warmth and laughter. It was a home filled with my chosen family, people who celebrated my successes and respected my boundaries. News from my biological family trickled in through Aunt Carol. As I had predicted, without me as their safety net, their carefully constructed world began to wobble. The fence I was supposed to have fixed finally blew over in a winter storm, costing them a significant amount to have professionally replaced. The running toilet in the guest room led to a slow leak that damaged the subfloor, resulting in a massive plumbing and repair bill. Leo's car, with its funny noise, finally broke down completely. Unable to afford the four-figure repair cost, he was forced to rely on rides and public transportation, which he found deeply humiliating. The biggest blow came when the business my parents had co-signed a loan for, some vague online drop-shipping scheme Leo had cooked up, inevitably collapsed. He had burned through the money with nothing to show for it. With the loan coming due and no income to pay it, my parents were forced to take out a second mortgage on their house, the same house that was now slowly falling apart around them. Leo, humbled and broke, had to move back into his childhood bedroom at the age of 34. There was a grim, poetic justice to it all. Their coddling of the golden child and their neglect of the fixer had led them to this entirely predictable, entirely self-made crisis. I didn't feel joy at their misfortune, but I did feel a sense of vindication. Their consequences were the direct result of their own choices. And for the first time, I wasn't there to absorb the impact. I was healing, building, and thriving, finally free from the weight of their world. About 8 months after our Christmas Day confrontation, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I nearly ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello?" I said cautiously. There was a pause on the other end, then a voice I hadn't heard in a long time, stripped of its usual bluster and authority. "Alex?" It's your father." I was silent, waiting. I wouldn't make this easy for him. He cleared his throat, a rough, uncertain sound. I know it's been a while. Your Aunt Carol told me about the big project you just finished. The one in the architectural magazine. She showed me the article. I remained silent. He continued, stumbling over the words. It's incredible, son. What you've built." I never understood. I was so focused on what I thought success was supposed to look like, so focused on Leo, that I didn't see you. I didn't see what you were doing. I was wrong. He took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry, Alex. For not seeing you. For not being the father you deserved." It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't erase 30 years of neglect. There was no mention of my mother or the financial burdens they'd placed on me. But the core of it, that I was wrong and I'm sorry, was there. It was a crack in the wall of his pride, a glimmer of something real. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Thank you for saying that, Dad," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I appreciate it." A few weeks later, he asked if I would meet him for coffee. I agreed, but on my terms. Neutral ground. Just the two of us. We met at a small cafe downtown. It was awkward at first, two strangers trying to find common ground. He looked older, more tired than I remembered. He told me about the second mortgage, about Leo living at home, not with pride or as a complaint, but with a sense of weary resignation. He asked me about my business, and for the first time, he actually listened to the answers. I didn't offer to help them financially. I didn't offer to fix anything at their house. I offered him a new kind of relationship, one built on mutual respect and clearly defined boundaries. He, humbled by circumstance, accepted. It was a tentative first step on a long, uncertain road. My mother and Leo were still silent, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that some part of my family, however broken, might one day be repaired. Looking back on it all now, the journey feels less like a dramatic battle and more like a slow, painful course correction. For decades, I was navigating my life by a broken compass, one that was calibrated to point toward my family's approval. I thought that if I just worked hard enough, was responsible enough, and fixed enough of their problems, I would eventually earn the validation I so desperately craved. The text message about skipping Christmas for peace was the moment I finally realized the compass was broken beyond repair. Their idea of peace was my servitude. Their idea of family was my obligation. The great irony is that my secret success was never really about them. I didn't build my company to prove them wrong. I built it because I loved the work, because Frank taught me to value myself, and because it was the one part of my life that was truly mine. The confrontation in my driveway wasn't a planned declaration of war, it was the inevitable collision between the reality I had built and the fantasy they had maintained. It was the moment I had to choose my world over theirs. Learning to validate myself was the hardest and most important project I've ever undertaken. It required me to accept that I could not get water from a dry well. My parents, trapped in their own dysfunctional patterns, were simply incapable of giving me the support and recognition I needed. True family, I learned, isn't about blood relation, it's about who shows up. It's Sarah, who saw the injustice and stood by me. It's Aunt Carol, who offered the validation my own mother couldn't. It's Mark and my work crew, who celebrated my wins without jealousy or expectation. My relationship with my father is slowly rebuilding, piece by piece, on a new foundation of honesty and respect. My mother and I exchange polite, infrequent texts. Leo remains a distant figure. The family I grew up with will never be the same, and that is a good thing. It had to break so I could heal. I found my peace, not by avoiding a holiday, but by embracing my own worth. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to fight for your own peace, let me know in the comments. Your story matters, and sharing it is the first step toward building a life on your own terms. Thank you for listening.